Hi, this is Dave Jagler, voice of the world champion Washington Nationals. The favorite call of my career is when Howie Kendrick beat the Dodgers with a grand slam in the playoffs. I said, "Do you believe it?" Well, you're listening to HOA Talk Time with Tab and Z. Do you believe it?
It's time for another edition of Ask Mr. Condo. Got questions? He's got answers.
All right, we are back. We have a special guest. He's an old guest, has been on the show before many times, but first time live and in somewhat HD. Bob Gourley, welcome.
Thank you. I feel like an old guest, a very, very old guest. Thanks.
Better known as Ask Mr. Condo, as we can see the graphic in the back.
I've been doing that since 2012 now. Quite a long time. I am a very old guest. You're right.
Very good. Well, we're definitely glad to have you. It brings a different dynamic. And especially, again, like we talked about in the last vidcast, we are sequestered. Tab's in the studio today. We still have I don't know, that's about 6 feet, right?
Yeah.
But, for this episode, I wanted to just kind of go over with you, Bob. How are things going in Florida with this whole thing? I could have sworn I saw you in that video with the Spring Breakers. I don't know.
Yeah, I was getting my peeping on. I was definitely out there bikini shopping. No, it was it's a crazy time in Florida. I live in Central Florida, and of course, home of the mouse and Universal and SeaWorld, and to have all these places closed. This economy is not used to not having fun going on all the time, so it's a major letdown for the economy. I'd say Florida is getting as hard hit as any other part of the country. And then we still have some craziness out at the shoreline. It is that time of year. People are coming down, and the beaches, some of the towns closed them. And I kind of felt the moment from Amityville or Amity in Jaws there, right, where the mayor's coming out. Oh, no, it's safe. Go to the beach, everyone. Right. It's safe. It's not Jaws. It's COVID. But so far, I have to tell you, I think the total number for the state, considering the size of the state, I think we're in the 16 or 17,000 total cases. And the county where I live in is up to about maybe 160 or 170 cases. So, it's really no worse than it is anywhere else. And people are practicing the social distancing. I'd say the tourists are more dangerous to us than the locals at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it is the world that we live in, so we're going to try to, push on with what we got going on, and hopefully we can bring a little levity to people's day. It's tough to see this stuff in the news, and so that's why I was thinking for this episode, hey, let's, see what we don't see in the news, right, Tab? I mean, let's see the state of the union, so to speak, of what's going on in the, condo world, HOA world. So I know yesterday we were supposed to record and we had little technical difficulties, and usually we prep for the show. So I know you sent us some talking points. I'm just going to try to pull up one of these things. Let me see here. What did you send here? Can the board reveal the names and addresses of infected residents?
Who is my neighbor? Yuck! How do I have to know what's going on? It's almost a variation on the old "who's the sex offender in my neighborhood" question. Why does the board tell me exactly who they are? Give me all their contact information, and just so I know. But it came up here in Florida very, very early on, where boards really just didn't know what can they do. And another phenomenon, we talked about Florida and what happens. A lot of people here cruise. People were coming in from those tainted cruise ships and going back to their gated communities. I have some older neighbors here, and one of them was on one of those Princess cruises and says, "Oh, it was a terrible cruise. We came in, we had to go right to the hospital." And I'm going, and now you're out talking to your neighbor. I'm going to walk the other way now that I know what's going on with you. But the issue then is, do I go ahead and put it in the association newsletter and tell everyone that Myrtle may have the creepy crud here? She was on one of those death ships, and now she brought back the COVID. But it wasn't that bad. But the reality is, unless the homeowner, the resident, gives permission to let the association know, to let other neighbors know, they can't identify them by name. They might be able to say, hey, we have an active case of COVID in our community.
Right.
But they're not going to say, stay away from Myrtle, with a 6-foot stick, make it a 10-foot stick with her, because she's more likely to have it than someone else. So it's a very real concern, and boards could find themselves in a lot of trouble if they just go publishing the names of people who they saw on the line at the COVID testing station, say, hey, this guy must think he has it or he wouldn't be there. And you better stay away from Mr. Johnson. So I think, common sense will prevail. I hope associations would reach out to their attorneys if they're truly concerned. And the other place I've seen it a problem, of course, is the high rises, which we have plenty of those in Florida, the condominiums with the shared elevator. And if you've never pushed an elevator button with your elbow, you're probably going to learn that skill pretty soon. And of course, the masks and the gloves, and getting tossed in the elevator on the way out. You hear all these horror stories from around. So there are crazy times here, but the reality is common sense precautions. We'll get everyone through it if they'll just use the common sense.
What's the limitation on number of people in an elevator?
In theory, I can think of using just yourself, and saying, I'm sorry, I'll send it back up, but I'm going down the 10 floors and then sending it back up to you. I haven't heard anyone come back to me and say we're limiting the number of people who can use the elevator at any given time. And keep in mind, it's often, could be a family coming out and getting into an elevator and going down, or a husband and wife, there's two. But you don't have 6 foot of space on a lot of these elevators. You just don't have that kind of space. So how could you be safe?
And plus, if you sneezed in the elevator, you got like 1 million spores that are just locked in this little cube.
Yeah, even beyond the sneeze. I mean, the way they say this thing lives, just the fact that you were in it for 2 minutes while it went from floor 20 to floor 1, everything you've exhaled in theory is there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'd be taking the stairs, or maybe thinking about getting out of my 20th floor place and staying on a lower level for a month or two if I could. Yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy. Well, I know, Tab, in the HOA world, we've seen a little bit of a change, right? Or what do you think?
In terms of what, inspections?
Just in general, like how it's impacted.
I don't know. I think it's just... I can't. We've seen, of course, we talked about some of the excuses, right, which don't really come across as plausible,
right?
About what people are saying they can't do things just because of, their knee-jerk reaction because of COVID-19, but I don't think we've personally encountered, as far as because us being able to function as a company or going out. I mean, look at us. We're doing the podcast.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's true. I mean, yeah, I guess it's kind of the same for everybody. You have to modify what you're doing in some respect. You just kind of persevere. But I guess it's no different anywhere, The funny thing is, I was thinking, okay, all right, what about HOAs? What about condos? But there's like other industries that you don't hear of, right? Or other things. Like I was thinking, like, what about criminals? What are they doing? I don't see much going on. You don't hear much about the drug dealers. You don't hear, they need that cover of, the hustle and bustle so they can do their drops or whatever they do, whatever. What are they doing? Are they all also just like, well, I don't know if I can give you that, can you pay by, airdrop? Bob, what do you think about that?
Well, I actually was out at a local hospital, and I was within earshot of a couple of the police who were talking to a couple of healthcare workers, and they said, what's it like out there? And he goes, we're quiet. He goes, we're actually very quiet, and he goes, and it kind of makes sense. And for everything you just said, he says, you're not going to go get mugged at the mall if no one's at the mall. and so in that way, it's a little quieter for them. That being said, we had a first responder police officer, I believe it was in Broward County, who caught COVID and died. He was one of the first, police people down here who did. So when they do make a bust, when they do arrest someone, even taking precautions, which I was told this particular gentleman did, they're still very vulnerable. So I'd say it's a combination of things. There's probably less crime going on in general, and there's probably less looking for people that you can go arrest who might infect you going on as well. And the police are needed elsewhere. Obviously, they've been used to control the crowd showing up for the testing. They're busy. They're busy. But yeah, we hear overall crime is down, and that's a good thing. That's an unusual side effect of something like this. I guess they haven't figured out a way to move that. Was that hydrochloroxy or whatever the miracle drug is? Yeah, it's not going to be, hey, you got a nickel bag anymore. It's going to be, hey, man, you got any of that good COVID stuff? That's what I'm looking for. That's right. That's the hot ticket in town. Yeah.
So do you think, Bob, these the HOA meetings that are now being conducted remotely, everybody's using Zoom, do you think this is a precursor of like the future of HOA meetings?
It's actually been around for a while. Many associations have met this way in the past as needed, and some of them just by the nature of perhaps, like, say, a ski resort community that's seasonal, they need to have a quarterly meeting for whatever reason. They're not all going to go back to the Vale or up to New Hampshire or wherever they're going to go for they're going to have the virtual meeting. So it's not an unheard of technology. I think where it's new and where it's a little scary for some associations is it's an association record. So they need to learn how to record. They need to realize that they're taking minutes off of these meetings. And in fact, they have to be made available to other association members upon request. And in some cases, they have to be held in such a way that, like right now, the three of us can talk and be in this meeting. We could have hundreds of people watching us who can't talk, but they have the right to observe.
Right.
And so all those things come into play. But again, in 2020, is it really so hard to think people understand technology well enough to conduct a virtual meeting?
In the HOA world, yeah.
Right.
They're still trying to master PDF and Excel.
Yeah, or that their internet provider will actually give them a signal that allows them to participate, and afterwards they say, oh, that vote's not fair. I didn't get to see it because Comcast cut my signal the last 15 minutes because Junior was trying to do his science project online, and I got cut out. So who knows? But you'll see more of it, not less of it. That's for sure.
Right. Well, should be interesting. I like it. I think at least this part of it, the trend is a good thing. It's easier, like you said, for documentation, and it's just more fun. Who doesn't want to see Bob?
And maybe it'll bring the younger participants into these board meetings, and not just fuddy-duddies like Bob.
Right.
There you go, you young whippersnapper. But I'll tell you, I've seen on Facebook the get-togethers, the virtual happy hours, all that kind of stuff. So there's a market for it for sure. And will we see more or less? I would think we'd see more. However, the nature of an HOA, the nature of a condominium, when everyone lives in the same place and there's a clubhouse or there's a nearby facility where they can meet, you're probably still going to see plenty of in-person meetings when things like this aren't going on. People don't like being quarantined. They like being there in person.
That's right. All right, Bob. Well, thanks for joining us, and we shall see you again soon.
I am looking forward to it. And maybe we can, when things get back to normal, the football season comes around, we can talk about that guy from New England who moved on down here.
I know. He's just following you.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Although I will say he has not been able to use any of Mr. Kraft's tips on massage parlors. They're all closed right now, so maybe in the future. Maybe in the future, guys.
All right, Bob. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
You want someone you can trust on your side when you're buying or selling your home. With over 15 years' experience, Chris Hild of Realty FC goes above and beyond as a standard for his company. That's why at Realty FC, it's not just a transaction, it's a relationship.